Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you can catch the new spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so you guys asked for this, and now here it is. Black Panther, Secret Invasion. See Wakanda and die. Alright, so after a number of requests, mostly between the videos on Black Panther in the comments section, and also you guys hit me up on Twitter, but for some time now I've had you guys asking me to do this video on the Black Panther tie-in to the Secret Invasion event. And initially I was going to wait till closer to February when the film comes out, but I figured why not, you guys deserve it. But before I dive into the events that took place in Wakanda, I want to take a quick minute and talk about the event as a whole. And this way you guys have a better idea on when the attack on Wakanda took place. And for anybody who's fairly new to comics and isn't familiar with what the Secret Invasion was, hopefully this will help you guys out too so you understand the full scale of this event. Alright, so in a nutshell, like any war, there's no one event that starts the war, but more rather like a series of events that happen until one side or the other takes action. And so most significantly at all these events, your Kree-Skrull War is your initial reason for a number of things that happen in Secret Invasion. And I mainly say that because they're the reason why the Illuminati formed in the first place. And what happens in this first meeting, which is essentially the birth of the Illuminati, takes place in Wakanda. And so at that point you had Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Reed Richards, Professor X, Black Bolt, and Namor. And they called T'Challa for this meeting. T'Challa really at this point didn't know what the meeting was for, but he accepted this offer mainly off the reason of everybody who was going to be there. He just knew the gravity of it had to be important. But this gathering happened shortly after the events of members of both the Kree and Skrull race used Earth as their battleground for a war that had been going on for centuries. And heroes like Tony Stark were like, hey, this is our fault. We knew they were here. We knew they've been at war with each other for ages. So because we knew that and took no kind of precaution, it's our fault. And this is why they proposed the idea of having a group that will be kept in secret even from their teammates. But when needed, because if was no longer a debate, but when the time came, they'd be able to form an army that'd be able to protect the Earth. And when this idea was proposed initially, T'Challa was the only one who did not want to do it, which is very important to the See Wakanda and Die event within Secret Invasion. And I'll tell you guys why it's important that he didn't join in just a moment. But for right now, the reason why he didn't join was more so to the fact that he felt like everyone had too much arrogance. And to him, it just seemed like a room full of people who just said, okay, we're powerful enough to just say whatever we say goes. Almost like a dictatorship. But it also raised the question like, hey, what if we disagree? And what if one of these earth-changing events puts us at odds with one another? Like, who's to say that people in this room are more worthy of this position than the teammates of the teams that they come from? And it's not like T'Challa didn't want to protect the world or form an alliance that would do that. Because I talked about on this channel before where T'Challa has had alliances and he's even called for help. Prime example when Magneto sent Apocalypse into Wakanda. So he understands there's a time for that. And he lends his ear to hear them out, mainly because Reed Richards is a close friend. And Reed even makes the argument that if we had a small meeting like this, even before the encounter with the Kree and Skrull army, that we could have saved countless lives. But T'Challa definitely saw this organization doing more harm than good in the long run. And that's why he initially declined and kicked everybody out. But after this meeting, because everyone agreed to an extent, they decided to continue and form the Illuminati. And one of the first things they do is reach out to the Skrull army and they tell them not to bring their fight to Earth again. But the Skrulls really wasn't hearing that, because much like any war that takes place on a huge scale, either side will kind of make their claims to themselves on what land, or what world in this case, they feel like is rightfully theirs. And that's how the Skrulls viewed Earth. They figure like, yeah, okay, the humans are there now, but if we want, we can just wipe you out and take your planet. And so with this threat not being taken serious, the Illuminati decides to step it up a notch, and they blow up their ship. But this is what I was talking about as far as like your cause and effect, because after this took place, you would notice that the Skrulls took the humans more seriously. And initially they pursued and captured the original members of the Illuminati, studied their powers in a number of painstaking experiments, but with doing this they gained knowledge of how all their powers work. But not just that, they also knew what they were up against. But amongst the Skrulls themselves, there was a conflict when Princess Varanki came forward with a prophecy saying that the Skrulls' world would be destroyed. And because of this, she was exiled, but pretty much saved her life because not too long after, it actually happened, by the hands of Galactus. And with their words being true, the survivors that were left deemed her as their new leader. And it was really from there where they decided to take all the research that they had gained from the Illuminati and use that information to allow them not only to look like the people of Earth, but also copy the powers of the heroes as well. And she mentioned, much like the case of Super Skrull, that they're not limited to just one for one. But much like Super Skrull, they can use a number of the hero's abilities at one time, but even better than him through their research, now they can match each Skrull pound for pound, power for power, with each human subject. And that's really how it started. From there, they abducted a number of heroes and started replacing them one by one, and even in some cases taking it a step further and having their enhanced taking on the abilities for multiple heroes. But those Skrulls were only used for battle instead of the rest, who were copied one for one that were used for just infiltration. And aside from the carbon copies of specific heroes that were put into society to take their place, they also had agents who would go in with no specific powers, but because of the information that they collected from Charles Xavier, it made telepathy useless as far as trying to use that to tell them apart from the humans. And so now jumping over to Wakanda, now this is why it was so important why when T'Challa didn't initially join the Illuminati, because had he been there when the Illuminati initially threatened the Skrulls, critical information about Wakanda would have been leaked. But with the intelligence that the Skrulls did gather, they were aware of Wakanda. And so because of that, they sent in agents to go into Wakanda and gather more intel to report back. And so when it came to the point that the Skrulls made their move to come and take over Wakanda, as they approached, they noticed it to be a lot quieter than what they'd expect. But as it turns out, as they approach closer and closer to Wakanda, they find their sleeper agents' heads on a pike. And that was the last thing they were expecting to see. Because to themselves, some of them figured, okay, this is just a little African country, how hard could this be? And up until this point, they assumed that their infiltration was undetectable. And they were shocked, because according to their intel, telepathy couldn't pick them up, and there was no earthly technology that they were aware of that could detect them either. But one of their biggest mistakes that they mentioned earlier in one of these issues, I want to say it was Black Panther issue number 38, they mentioned that Wakanda is advanced by human standards, and they completely underestimate the capability of this great nation. And T'Challa plays their prideful ignorance to his advantage. Because when this Skrull fleet, or the 7th Skrull fleet to be more specific, when they are assigned to come here to Wakanda, Black Panther knows at this point that these guys have scoped the place out, and he can't just take them on head to head by regular means. So when he lures them in close enough, he finally gives the order to open fire, but not with the intent of destroying their ships, but rather he releases energy disruptors in the form of lasers with the purpose of taking out their armories. And I love how this is done, because it's captain versus captain, crew versus crew. It's kind of like a Star Trek kind of execution. And when the Skrulls finally realize what's happened and how the weapons are taken out, they're just like, okay, we'll do the same thing to them. But not only to the point of taking down their weapons, but also hacking into their system and shutting down their power. But T'Challa knew when he made that move that they were going to counter in that same fashion. But his plan at this point was to use that short window, hack into their system, and shut down the power for their ship. But this all had to be done in a matter of a few minutes. And really, it just goes to show the confidence that T'Challa has in his crew. Mainly in Wakabi, his chief of security. Because even though he doesn't speak Skrull, he has to find these patterns and figure this out. Because at this point, the Skrulls are still approaching, and if they get close enough, they can just blow them away. And as the seconds count down, like the pressure is on, because they cut off the power, or at least the main power, and soon to be the auxiliary power. And Wakabi has to figure it out fast, or everybody's done. But with T'Challa breathing down his neck and the most unsure press of a button, it works. He was able to get in, shut down the power to their ship, forcing the Skrulls to crash land within a few kilometers of Wakanda. But this is exactly what T'Challa wanted, because now the Skrulls were actually forced to fight. And really, I gotta say, just the strategic planning and the way that Black Panther evens the playing field, it's just one of the reasons why I love this story so much. And reading this again recently reminds me so much of that Secret Wars event, which is just another example that goes to show you that you can even put this guy up against someone with godlike powers, and he will figure out a way. But another thing I love about this series is that we actually get to see, like, for a long time we hear about Wakanda being unconquered, and even the Skrulls here know of Wakanda's reputation, but it's very rare that we get these tie-ins and we get these illustrations of the Black Panther, the Dora Milaje, and the army of Wakanda actually defending their country. And when this happens, like, make no mistake, the Black Panther, they're not like your street vigilantes. And when it comes to defending their country, expressly to a Skrull race who plans to enslave them so they can mine vibranium, like, these guys don't fight like, okay, here's a punch, lay down, call the police, let them take away the bad guy. Nah, bruh, these are warriors. They live and die for their king and their country. And every last one of them trusts T'Challa with their lives. They'll follow him to the end of the earth, they believe in their leader and their god, and they won't have that taken without a fight. And that is exactly what we get here. But just as a reminder, at this point, you know, as far as time frame, Storm and T'Challa are still married. She's out here with him fighting, and she wants to just toss these guys away in a tornado, but T'Challa just tells her to stick to the plan. Because at this point in time, he really wants to keep them in a controlled area. But on top of that, he also has another trick up his sleeve that he needs her to help him with. But throughout the battle, when you read this issue, like I mentioned before about the loyalty that the people of Wakanda have to their king, but his love for his people matches that, if not greater. because you'll also see a number of times when his men are struck down, like you'll see times where he calls them by name, says a prayer for them, because for him, his people are more than just another number in the crowd. Like when they lose their lives for their king and their country, he feels that, and he doesn't take it lightly, not in the slightest. Alright, so at one point in the battle, he is confronted by one of the Skrulls, and this one in particular is their champion, so to speak, or at least the champion of the 7th Fleet. He's super strong, he shoots energy blasts, and he even has claws like Wolverine. And he tells T'Challa, like, I've been training my entire life to fight you, and I want to fight you, not any of your servants. They're not worthy to die by my hand. And before he even gets to finish, before he even strikes Black Panther or attempts to strike him, two of his nearby soldiers, one being Shambay, son of Doom, they immediately come to T'Challa's aid. They're like, we must protect the king, and they get slaughtered within seconds. And after that happens, T'Challa breaks this guy down slowly and painfully. He breaks his arm like a chicken wing, and he doesn't inflict any lethal damage. Like, he makes sure that this guy feels pain. And dude tries to get him back with these little moon-shaped batarang type things, but he's too slow to keep up. And that's the thing, like, he mentioned he trained his whole life to fight the Black Panther, but T'Challa told him that's where you fail, because the Black Panther has trained his whole life to face the unknown. And because of that, what the Black Panther is ready to face is beyond you. But he totally embarrasses him. He plucks his eye out, shows it to him, throws it away. Like, he really makes an example out of this guy. And he makes sure that his defeat is as embarrassing as possible, because he knows what he wants. Win or lose, he wants this honorable match with the Black Panther. But T'Challa refuses to give him that honor, even so much to the extent when he begs T'Challa to end it, T'Challa's like, nah, you can just lay here and rot. But shortly after this, Storm is taken by a sleeper agent that still remains in the Wakandan army. And when she's taken, T'Challa stops where he's at, and they both turn themselves over. And when this happens, both Storm and T'Challa are taken aboard the ship, where the Skrulls start their interrogation. And so at this point, the captain, I believe his name is Kver or K-Ver. It's like K, 3 V's and an R. Yeah, like the spelling is extra alien. But initially he leads the interrogation. But the strangest thing that happens here is no matter what the captain says to T'Challa or Storm, they only look at him and no one else. And the only words that they utter to him are go to hell. And the captain commands his men to torture them for hours, but while this happens, they don't groan for pain, they don't scream, anything like that. Just occasionally they'll say the same words over and over again. But the captain returns to the bridge and he tells them, you know, just call me back once you break them. Once they start talking and giving information. And so while the captain's gone, one of the men finds something in T'Challa's throat. And while he's checking it out, two of the Skrulls report to the captain that they have an update. And they claim that they figured out how the Black Panther had found their sleeper agents. And their answer to this was their souls. Because the Skrull technology was undetectable to their DNA, both to their body and to their minds. But the one thing that they couldn't replicate or hide was their living souls. And so when they removed one of the devices from the T'Challa that's laying on the table, it turned out that it was a voice manipulator that would only allow him to say a few words. But once they took it out, he was like, look man, I am not the Black Panther. They figured this out a while back. They implanted vocal manipulators and flesh transmuters on them so they couldn't change their appearance and they could only say but a few words. And as it turned out, it was Storm and T'Challa who went into disguise on the battlefield, took these Skrulls hostage and brought them aboard the ship. And the whole time that Kver is getting this news, the Skrulls behind him digitally changed shape to T'Challa and Storm. And it's crazy because the captain kept shutting them up, saying, shut up, I'm trying to hear what's happening over here. But T'Challa in disguise was saying, you cannot hide your soul from the Panther God. Like, he was literally in his face telling him who he was. But as soon as they take him out, Storm makes lightning strike, which is the signal for the rest of the army to invade the ship. And really from there, it was a wrap. And that's really the main thing I love about the character Black Panther. Because with him, it's not necessarily about being the strongest or the fastest, but it's about having a plan and using the hand that you're dealt to come out on top with the win. And in this storyline specifically, it's not like he always felt like he was going to come out on top, but he had a plan from the beginning and he stuck with it all the way through to the end. But yeah, see Wakanda and Die is definitely in my top favorites for Black Panther stories. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know what's your favorite Black Panther story, or even after hearing this one, what you thought about this one. Because like I said before, I really gravitate towards these stories that really tell you more about the character and what he would do in these situations where he's in over his head. And for another example of that, just recently I did a video on the history of Black Panther versus Bruce Banner Hulk. And we made many references to his encounter with Amadeus Cho, but the history of the track record between T'Challa and Bruce Banner, it just plays more of a testament to the Black Panther character and his wisdom and evolution. But like I said, that's it for this one, guys. If you learned something new, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you can catch the spills every week. I got plenty more Black Panther videos where this one came from, so check those out and we'll do it again next time. Alright, later.